I'm also going to talk about the war against white people in the United States of America. Yes, that's right. You heard me. If you are a white person, don't think you're crazy if you sense that you're being discriminated against. An article just came out by Daniel Greenfield, a front page mag, where he said, according to his analysis, discrimination against white people, it's real. The release of an NPR poll in which a majority of white people, 55% of whites, answered that they face racial discrimination, was treated by the vermin in the media with their usual cocktail of condescension, disbelief, and contempt. But we all know it's not up for debate. We all know that racial discrimination against Caucasians today is as real as the discrimination against minorities was under segregation. And that is what we're going to talk about today. Only one racial group in America today is subject to a system of codes, regulations, and laws discriminating against members of its race when it comes to what? Employment and education. Whether it's advancement in a police department, a fire department, a university, or in a corporation. Affirmative action is an inescapably real and racist system that is as segregated as water fountains.
Let me say something about infrastructure. It seems to me that infrastructure spending is a very important and good way of stimulating the economy. The challenge will be to do it quickly, to find projects that can be done that have a high social return that also can be done with the greatest speed possible. I am concerned, as I'm sure many of you are, that these jobs not simply go to high-skilled people who are already professionals or to white male construction workers. I am concerned, as I'm sure many of you are, that these jobs not simply go to high-skilled people who are already professionals or to white male construction workers. I am concerned, as I'm sure many of you are, that these jobs not simply go to high-skilled people who are already professionals or to white male construction workers.
You moron, you little moron, you ought to crawl back into the woodwork. You're nothing but a cockroach, Reich. You fraud, you. What a country we're living in, that a cockroach like this can get away with that. He got away with it because of the Lilliputians in the media who are not even reporting on this. Again, I want to reverse it so you understand where we are. Let us make believe that today, January 22, is a day that a conservative had won the election. Not that we had one running, but let's say we had a real conservative running. And the white male conservative had appointed someone to his economic council who comes up and says, I want to make sure that the jobs not go to black male construction workers. I want to know how long he'd be in office. The least represented segment of our society, which is the unconnected, poor white male, in this case, the white male construction worker. He is being targeted by this man, Robert Reich, this disgusting creep, this cockroach. And I'm saying he needs to be fired. We, the people, need to stand up and have this man fired. We need to make a ruckus about this, because otherwise, if we let things like this go unchallenged, it's going to get much worse. I'm aware of the fact that we've entered a Marxist America. I know that. I live with it. I know that the government is extremely racist. I know that. And I understand that they try to exclude white males from virtually every aspect of government, contracting and government jobs. But to hear an economic advisor saying that the new money, the $800 billion or trillion, whatever they're going to put out in this construction area, not go to white males is kind of alarming, don't you think? Flawed as Bush was as a president, there was almost no racial enmity in this country. It's true that Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson and a few other race mongers tried to stir up racial hatred, but they got nowhere. This country has been at relative peace racially for the last 8 years. I have seen and heard nothing but issues of race since this man became president. From the day the man has become president, from Reverend Lowry attacking white people to this little cretin saying white males need not apply, this is all about race. And we're supposed to look the other way? To me, the king has no clothes. Period. End of story.
I'm also going to talk about a psychotic professor at the City University of New York. I don't know how these people hold on to their jobs other than the chairmen of the departments are crazier and more racist than they are. a psychotic professor at University of New York at Hunter College, which used to be a very, very distinguished college many years ago. It is now a cesspool, especially in sociology. She had the nerve to tweet that white families equal white supremacy, and by having children, if you're white, you are continuing the supremacy of the white people. Now, you know that if anyone said that about black people, they would be thrown off campus, and they should be thrown off campus. Can anyone tell me why a professor, so-called like this, is allowed to stay on a campus, making so many white children uncomfortable and frightened for their lives? Well, those are some of the topics on the Savage Nation today. And the phone number here is 855-407-282. But I want to... I love my position, and I know how powerful these psychotics really are. They run everything. Having a white nuclear family promotes white supremacy, says a New York college professor. I got to read this to you. I'm going to get back to everything else, but this one has been eating at me. A so-called City University of New York so-called sociology professor reportedly said in a tweet storm last week that, quote, the white nuclear family promotes racism. A so-called professor named Jessie Daniels, who calls herself an expert on, quote, the internet manifestations of racism on the City University of New York page, said that white families promote racism by default. The so-called professor began her argument saying that she learned that, quote, the white nuclear family is one of the most powerful forces supporting white supremacy, adding that families reproducing white children are part of the problem as they facilitate white supremacy in the country, according to campus reform. She reportedly tweeted, quote, I mean, if you're a white person who says they're engaged in dismantling white supremacy, but you're forming a white family and reproducing white children that you want the best for, how is that helping and not part of the problem? The great professor reportedly ended her argument suggesting that, quote, white people should confront their racism and stop perpetuating inequality by leaving their homes for their children. Listen to what else this wonderful genius said. Until white people are ready to confront their own family's racism and participation in systemic white supremacy, it's not getting dismantled, this genius wrote. Beyond just calling out interpersonal racism, white people who want to be engaged in the work need to ask themselves about housing wealth. The genius said, white people, do you own your home? When you die, where's wealth in that house going? If it's to your children, you're reproducing inequality. Now, if you think that this crackpot is alone, you're mistaken. The universities, especially the East Coast liberal universities, are filled with such psychotics. They're anti-white, anti-heterosexual, anti-Christian, anti-Jewish, anti-quality, anti-truth, and they're surely anti-God and anti-reason. And I'm telling you, we don't have to take this anymore. I'm telling you this has gone more than far enough. I'm telling you that the universities must be forced to purge themselves of these racist psychotics before it is too late.
Racially charged murder trials getting scant national press. It's on michaelsavage.com. Christian and Newsom, that's a white couple, young couple. They were out on a dinner date in Knoxville, Tennessee. Nice kids, kids next door. Carjacked, kidnapped, tortured, raped, murdered, set on fire by a group of blacks. So I'll go on with the story. They're talking about the fact that the Associated Press wire stories on the killing were carried by Knoxville news outlets, CBS News and Fox News, but other major media wouldn't touch it at all. Search of the Nexus database found that the May 8th story on this website, aside from this one, no other major media outlets have reported the case. ABC, CBS, NBC, CNN, and New York Times would not return calls. They wouldn't cover it. However, conservative talk host Michael Savage said on his May 9 radio program that the Knoxville situation got me sick. So they called up a professor of journalism, don't you know, by the name of Robert Zelnick. And he's at Boston University. Probably dresses correctly, Mr. Zelnick. Oh, yeah, dresses British. Knows how to make a tie. Knows how to smile at a cocktail party with politicians, Mr. Zelnick. Moved himself up from the needle trades in 1-2 generations. The professor of journalism at Boston University, Mr. Zelnick, told Cybercast News Services that the Knoxville murders, as gruesome as they were, need a strong peg to reach a national audience. He said racism would certainly be one. Celebrity involvement would be another. But the coincidence of white victims and black perpetrators doesn't pass muster, though the coincidence of white perpetrators and black victims might, because of its relative infrequency. But the coincidence of white victims and black perpetrators doesn't pass muster, though the coincidence of white perpetrators and black victims might, because of its relative infrequency. But the coincidence of white victims and black perpetrators doesn't pass muster, though the coincidence of white perpetrators and black victims might, because of its relative infrequency. And so there it is. So Zelnick says the reason it hasn't been picked up is because it's not sexy. After all, she's just a white girl and he's a white boy, and they're just black guys who, well, they just did them, that's all. Not only they do them, they did them in a way that you wouldn't even see in Iraq. But that doesn't make it to the New York Times. Instead, they show someone with Down syndrome on the front page last week having a coat put on her back by her father. Showing you something about Down syndrome as the lead story, for example. Where are the two megaphone reverends, Sharpton and Jackson? I would think that raping, mutilating, torturing, and setting people afire is worse than a radio insult, and yet the good reverends are nowhere to be found. Isn't that interesting?